On the edge of America, in Texas's southern Rio Grande Valley, there is a 4-mile stretch of road called Oklahoma Avenue. It runs parallel to the Rio Grande, the border between the United States and Mexico. The river flows a few hundred yards from the farms and homes that dot the area. In 2007, Oklahoma Avenue became ground zero for the construction of a border fence to block people from illegally crossing into the United States. The first step, Homeland Security had to take a swath of land between the road and the river. Under a process called eminent domain, the government must file a declaration of taking. It allows the government to seize private property right away. In exchange, the feds have to pay landowners for the damages done to their property. Under the U.S. Constitution, those payments are supposed to be equitable. But as the people on Oklahoma Avenue learned, the government did not play fair. If you hired a lawyer, you could get way more money than if you faced the government alone. Same land, different payments. That's the story of scores of property owners forced to sell land for the fence across South Texas. It was a land grab marked by incompetence and inequity. On Oklahoma Avenue, the disparity was especially clear. Juan Cavazos worked most of his adult life as a teacher in Brownsville's public schools. He owned a home on 30 acres along Oklahoma Avenue when the government came for the land.
The government, what they want to do, they'll do it regardless. And we were totally against building the border wall, but we couldn't, we couldn't do anything about it. That's why we didn't go through a lawyer. They throw the eminent domain at you.
Cavazos didn't try and fight it. He figured a lawyer would cost too much.
They paid us for it, $25,000 for the 2.5 acres. We thought it was a feasible price.
Like scores of others, he didn't try to negotiate. Only years later did he learn that neighbors with similar land had gotten much more. Now, says Cavazos,
we got screwed by the government. See, that's a signal that it's going to close on me.
When Homeland Security built the fence, farmers were worried about how they were going to get to their crops. In some places, the agency built electronic gates which would open with access codes. In other places, they planned to build gates, but ran out of money. As a result, the border fence is laced with holes, some more than 40 feet wide, where anybody can pass through if they choose. 10 years later, Homeland Security is still planning to close those gaps. A couple of miles down the road from Juan Cavazos is the Perez family. Homeland Security officials told the Perez family that they were going to pay $21,000 for the land. Joe Perez handled the transaction for his aging parents, Tomas and Otalia Perez.
Either do this or we condemn the property and then we're going to take it anyway. So, my folks are old and they need to be in that legal battle. So, look, just take whatever they give you now, and because it's going to happen anyway. Actually, the word gets around and some people got different amounts. So we never really saw any actual real numbers to confirm, this is what they got and this is what we got. I mean, you can ask whatever amount you want, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it.
By the time Perez found out he could argue the price, it was too late. Homeland Security had built the fence across the street from the family home. The Perez family wonders now if they got a fair deal. Not everyone living with the fence on Oklahoma Avenue was compensated by the government. The border fence runs about 40 feet away from the back of Melissa Solis's home, just on the other side of her property line.
For us, it's just right behind our backyard. So we did not lose property, which I thank God for that. Many did.
Under the U.S. Constitution, the federal government is supposed to provide just compensation when it takes land from private citizens to build a project like the border fence. But the agency paid nothing to owners like Solis, whose land did not intersect the fence's path. The agency simply decided that the fence did not diminish the value of their land. The decision left scores of property owners in Texas with lives and land impacted by the border fence, but nothing to compensate them for their losses.
It's very upsetting, like when we have hurricanes, because of that construction, now our backyard floods. And it gets so near to our home that now we have to deal with that.
Solis could have filed a lawsuit against the government, charging that they had impacted her land, but not paid any damages. But she wasn't fully aware of her legal rights, and she didn't know who to talk to.
It's like, who can I call? Who can I send an email to? That's very upsetting.
The Loops have been farming the fertile bottomland along the Rio Grande for 4 generations. Ray Loop and his brother Frank grow crops on land adjacent to their cousins, Tim and Paul Loop. When the landmen made offers to buy parts of their farms, the two sets of brothers took different paths. At first, Tim and Paul decided to accept whatever the government was offering. They didn't try to bargain. Houston land attorney Kim Lacine said many people in the area didn't know their legal rights.
You've got the government taking title to a whole bunch of land where people either knew it was coming just briefly, or didn't know at all it was coming, or didn't know exactly what it was. So there were a lot of uncertainties down there.
Ray and his family decided to fight. Lacine would represent them.
They had just been put in a position that was so inequitable that they had no choice but to seek legal counsel. It wasn't a protest against the wall or anything. It was, geez, you're gonna fence off 630 acres and you're not really recognizing that that's gonna be a pretty big inconvenience for us to keep farming.
The case dragged on. The government didn't seem to be doing a lot of things you traditionally see in an eminent domain case. They couldn't describe the properties. They hadn't done appraisals on land they were taking. It was too much for the Justice Department lawyers to do. Cases dragged on for years, and still do today.
They had 400 or 500 parcels to process in a very short period of time, and they weren't doing surveying and title work. We're at 10 years out on this litigation, and there are still open border fence cases that they are still trying to get resolved. I mean, that's crazy.
In the end, Ray and Frank Loop wound up getting $1.4 million for the seizure of 11 acres of land. Tim and Paul were not quite so lucky. They got $400,000 and lost twice as much land. Lacine said that the Loops were just one family on one street, Oklahoma Avenue. All you needed to do was walk up and down it, and you'd find plenty of examples of people who weren't treated fairly by the government.
The disappointment was that they couldn't exercise more care when they literally were securing the country at the hands of 400 people along the valley. Those people should be not just compensated, but well compensated and treated well. And they shouldn't have to litigate for 5 or 6 years to get what constitutionally is due them.